for individual professors, but also for society at large and for universities, is the idea that professors should be free to do research, to publish their materials, to debate and exchange ideas. That, in fact, is how knowledge is generated, refined, reproduced, etc. The second element of academic freedom is freedom in the classroom. And that means that professors have, by their status as people who've been employed by colleges and universities, have a certain recognized expertise and have the latitude to be able to teach and encourage discussion, etc. Now, it is in fact this second freedom, freedom in the classroom, that is at the heart of this particular issue. But ultimately, one can say that this is not an absolute freedom, but that within the context of the professional culture of the universities, that professors are hired, promoted, etc., on the basis of their expertise and command of information. And so freedom in the classroom basically assumes, and within departments and within universities, that teachers can have a lot of latitude as long as it's in keeping with the relevant materials of the class, and that can of course be debated. But that professors have a role that should warrant some freedom in the classroom. The third component of academic freedom is freedom of extracurricular speech, which essentially is a First Amendment right. And in that sense, then, professors, like everyone else, has the right to speak freely outside of the classroom. And as an element of academic freedom, it means that people should not be penalized professionally for speech or talk that they give outside the classroom. So even then, for example, if a chemist whose expertise is chemistry is outside of the classroom critical of the Iraq War, he's permitted as a First Amendment right to speak on the Iraq War, even though that's not his professional expertise, and should not be criticized for that. Now, the way in which academic freedom, in a sense, operates is that it it's a professional right, and it's a privilege that professors enjoy, professors and lecturers. And it's determined by, it's not unbridled freedom, it's not absolute freedom, but the way in which it works is that it's determined by the norms of the various disciplines or the profession as a whole through various kinds of review processes. People are hired to become professors on the basis of certain criteria that they are judged to have against their competitors. They are given tenure or not given tenure on the basis of whether or not they are capable of publishing materials in their field, and those materials being deemed worthy, etc. So this is, in a sense, it's a professional set of rights. It's not an individual right, although individuals, of course, benefit from it. It is a collective professional right that the professoriate has as a whole. Now, I want to come just specifically to the question, back to the question of the classroom. Part of what is important about academic freedom, and coming back to the role of the university, to encourage not only learning, but learning oftentimes through disagreement, through debate, through the introduction of controversial materials. Those are important and recognized rights and freedoms that the professoriate has, and it's deemed to be valuable to society as a whole. Now, of course, and we as professors have to learn and teach how to tolerate disagreement. So indeed, students absolutely have a right to be free from being indoctrinated in class, but they also have a right, in a sense, to be exposed to materials that are unfamiliar to them, that make them uncomfortable, etc. And I want to just give you, for a moment, two stories from my own background about how I learned from my own mistakes well, one was a mistake and one wasn't a mistake, but in the classroom, one of which has nothing to do with Israel-Palestine. My first year teaching at Swarthmore College, I was teaching a sociology class on gender and something. I can't remember. But anyway, one of the things that I did in the class, in the section on gender violence in politics, was to show a film that I'm sure many of you have seen called The Bandit Queen, which is a film about Phulan Devi from India. Now, I work on violence, and I perhaps was, inured to how students being exposed to violence might not be, perhaps I was a little oblivious because it was my first year teaching. I showed this film, didn't give any kind of preparation for the film. And in the film, there are a number of rape scenes, including a very protracted, violent gang rape scene. To me, it was just a part of what we were going to be discussing, but when the film was over, you know, and I turned on the lights and the students filtered out, there was one student in the back of the room who was completely, you know, sort of in shock. And as I subsequently learned, she had recently been raped, and the film itself was just traumatizing for her. Now, that experience, it was traumatizing for her, and I felt horrible about having done so. It taught me something about teaching. It taught me something, and that student, you know, we continued to work together. I became her advisor. The experience actually facilitated us, but it also taught me about the need to be more sensitive and more alert and more attuned to issues in the classroom, and I think it made me a better teacher. And it was, you know, so one can say that one can have mistakes or grieve students and not necessarily have it need to go in the course that this particular case is called. The other story I would tell for myself was, again, still at Swarthmore College, although it might happen here as well, was that I taught a course on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And unbeknownst to me, Jewish organizations on campus had all sort of met before the quarter. I was a new professor, and they had all agreed that every student who could take my class would take my class. So it was sort of collective monitoring. I didn't realize this until a bit later, but students in that class, including two of the most outspoken, one was an Israeli, another was somebody who was involved in the Zionist organization on campus, both of them, over the course of the quarter, were, you know, incredibly, in a sense, when it works well. Now, I want to say something just from my experience about academic freedom at UCS, in the UC system. In response to, in the sort of late 1990s and early 20, you know, in this century, in this decade, was the a whole process of efforts across the country to engage in these, and it was David Horowitz was one of the people sort of spearheading it. It claims to support. It threatens to impose administrative and legislative oversight on the professional judgment of faculty, to deprive professors of the authority necessary for teaching, and to prohibit academic institutions from making the decisions that are necessary for the advancement of knowledge. In response to that move and efforts in the California legislature to actually introduce some of these bills of rights, the system-wide Committee on Academic Freedom developed over years, and it will presumably go into effect come this August, is this, the UC Student Freedom of Scholarly Inquiry, which establishes sort of the relationship, the rights that students have, you know, vis-a-vis their professors, and the rights and responsibilities professors have, but it respects, and I'm proud of the UC system for doing this, it respects the principles, it integrates the principles of academic freedom, and it does so in a way that helps everyone, students, professors, and society, appreciate the value of the freedom of professors. Now, I would just say, finally, and we'll come to this in questions, but I think, again, I want to thank everyone for coming. I think that problems really do offer opportunities for teachable moments. And just to reiterate something that Jeff said, I think one of the reasons why this case has sort of got spun out of control is because there's an insufficient understanding about what academic freedom is, and I think we need to take the time. It's not an innate knowledge that professors just know what it is or how it works, but it's something that I think working cooperatively with members of the academic senate and edifying people about it, we can really appreciate how it works, why it must be protected, and the values it serves, not just for individuals, but for the institution and for society. Thank you.